Up next, we have Adam. Ready?
Yep.
Set, go.
All right, hi everybody. My name is Adam. I'm from DevOps, and this is already my 6th DevOps Days this year. And one of the topics that usually comes up at these conferences is around automation. So I thought it would be fun to talk about how our brains use automation. So I'd like to bring you guys through an exercise first. Let's take James. James is shy, he's helpful, he has little interest in the world of reality. He's meek, he needs order and structure, and has a passion for details. So based on this information, is James more likely to be a librarian or a farmer? So raise your hand if you think librarian. All right, raise your hand if you think farmer. All right, it's kind of split. Well, James is actually more likely to be a farmer because there's about 20 times more male farmers out there than there are male librarians. And even though the traits that I listed more closely align with a librarian, he's helpful, he needs order and structure, statistically speaking, he's more likely to be a farmer. And many of us use those traits to make this decision, and that error in judgment is cognitive bias. So cognitive bias is errors in thinking that affect our decisions and judgments. And so I'm going to walk through a couple other examples, and when I do, think about when yourself or others that you know do some of these things. So confirmation bias. This is when we seek out news feeds that only align with our own beliefs, or overconfidence bias. Have you ever met someone that claims that they're really good at singing, but once you hear them, they're actually not really that good? Or the IKEA bias. I mean, we all have peers that have built internal systems that aren't really that great, but for them, it's the best thing ever, right? Or the halo effect. You probably believe what I'm telling you simply because I'm on the stage and I have a microphone in my hand, right? So there's a ton of these. I think they've identified about 175 different types, and they're really hard to identify within ourselves, but once you're aware of them, you can start to identify when other people are going through this. And we like to think that we're logical and objective, but why do we have these biases? And it really stems from the fact that our brains create shortcuts called heuristics to automate simple tasks. And so over time, our brains have really adapted to automate certain things like sitting down or typing. Think about when you type into your command line, you don't have to think about every single keystroke, right? And that's because these simple activities hit the fast part of our brains first, the part that's responsible for memory, reflex, and emotion, before moving to the slow parts of our brains that are logical, analytical, and deal with problem solving. And that's really because our brains simply can't process every single piece of information, nor can they think about every single outcome. So they have to create these shortcuts based on your experience and your personality. Now, mistakes start to happen when your brain starts to automate more complex activities. So let's say your girlfriend or boyfriend over the last couple of months asked you to marry them. What if you only use that fast part of your brain that's responsible for memory, reflex, and emotion? It might not be the best decision, right? So let's put this into context around our world. So many of us in our day-to-day life need to make decisions quickly, but those decisions require problem solving. And this is especially true when it comes to complex systems like modern infrastructure. And so most of my experience within DevOps is around incident management. So let's take a service disruption as an example. Now you have to respond really quickly. Raise your hand if you're rational and objective in that situation, right? It's really hard because you have a lot of constraints, right? You're trying to balance the need to make a quick, efficient decision with the need to analyze information from complex systems. So in this situation, take a step back and try to engage that slower part of your brain. And during a service disruption, collaborate, work as a team. This is often the best way to deal with cognitive bias because you can start to identify when it's happening with other people. And so other recommendations would be to have a facilitator for post-incident reviews or post-mortems. That way they can identify when it's happening with the team. And provide triage documentation like runbooks. That gives the person some context when they're responding. It really helps maybe give them some instructions on how to respond. And so your brains automate simple tasks to really help you out. However, for more complex activities like service disruption, a marriage proposal, or other areas in your life, take a step back and just try and engage that slow part of your brain. Thank you.
Awesome.